Kako će izgledati poslovanje u budućnosti? Kakvi biznis modeli se već sada mogu naslutiti? Kako graditi biznis po mjeri održivog razvoja? Mnogi poslovni ljudi širom svijeta istražuju odgovore na ova pitanja, pa čak postoje i konferencije na kojima se raspravlja o ovim temama. Johanas Milke, jedan od osnivača inovativne agencije J2C iz Berlina, putuje svijetom kako bi došao do smislenih odgovora koji se kao svojevrsni kapital mogu iskoristiti u poslovnom kontekstu.
So I'm a bit of an explorer of different futures. I go out, travel the world, meet a lot of different people and companies with different perspectives, and I bring that inspiration home and share that in keynotes, in workshops, in social media, of course, and also in a very particular format which we call the innovation expedition or a trend journey. In that format we curate very personal encounters and dialogues between more corporate managers on the one side and then on the other hand founders and entrepreneurs of startups to learn from each other, to share experiences, to really dive deep and to inspire each other. And this format we've done many times, especially here in Berlin because it's our playground and there are a lot of different startups out there, but also in Dubai, London, Shanghai, and the last one in Lisbon, Portugal, as part of a future conference called La Futura. And that one was very special. We scouted over 250 locations in the city and created 10 different routes which the participants could choose from to explore the city from a different lens, from a different perspective. And on these journeys we always meet some of the entrepreneurs, so there's a direct encounter, but then also other things that we just explore, walk in, walk by, and be curious and explore the city with slightly different view, I would say.
Why do business people join these innovation expeditions? How do they benefit from such an experience?
In this format, the participants first learn how to work together in a team and solve a design challenge. So they get a first-hand experience of what it's like to work in a startup way. And then, on the other hand, they get a direct exposure to the real world, let's say. And they get to know different people with different backgrounds and get inspiration from their stories, from their learnings, from their failures. And in the end, we make sense of all of this so that they can take something valuable home with them and which is relevant for their context. In this sense, we focus mostly on the cultural aspects, on leadership aspects, creativity, learning, failures, all of these things that are very important, I think, to innovate, to be a creator. You have to deal with these changing realities. And I think startups do that naturally because they have to. And corporates can learn a lot from the way startups work. And I'm not saying that every corporate company needs to be like a startup, but I'm sure there's something to learn from each other. And our format has proven to be very well received by many people all around the world. And the experience is very personal and very intense usually.
How do you prepare these formats?
Well, it's a bit like a theater play where you have your actors in place and you have your scenes ready, but then the magic happens in the moment. And that's how it is with many of these formats. You can only control them to a certain extent, and the real special things that people take home with them, that emerges from the moment, I think. And it's really important to be also present, to be awake, to be there, to be curious, to be open-minded, and all of these things we of course promote, but then leave that also up to the chance of the moment. Especially in these learning journeys and trend journeys, I think about different themes that could be interesting and relevant. And then I go out and scout locations and people who have something to say about this or who represent this trend or this theme. And then I, let's say, create routes or create individual journeys that the participants take on. And what is, for example, really important is that it's small groups and personal encounters, not a big herd of people who walk into the room and they get a keynote and a pitch. That's something okay, interesting, but not really personally inspiring. So we try to make create an experience environment which is very personal and very special to their individual interests and needs. And on the other hand, also always offer something that is surprising, something that is out of their context, out of their industry, which really shakes them up a little bit and shows them something like, wow, this is also possible, and this can be done in this way. And I think that's what makes it special. But I think I don't have the recipe of doing it. Maybe a few things, more principles, is like to be aware of your environment, be in the present moment, be awake, so get some sleep the night before, and be brave to also, don't know everything exactly, but be prepared.
Is there a specific topic in the core of these expeditions?
I mean, usually it's really about entrepreneurship. That's the core. So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? How do entrepreneurs think and act? Then creativity, very important. Leadership is always a big theme in this context. And then we have different trends. For example, in Lisbon, we looked at the quality of life as the mega trend. Yeah? So what is the quality of life in the future? And that touches almost everything, from mobility to energy to healthcare to leisure and culture to food to architecture, environments, ecology, nature. All of these things are important in the context of quality of life. Yes. So, and these themes always differ depending on the situation or the context of the client or of the partner that we work with. I mean, especially in Lisbon, you can see a lot of abandoned places that are being transformed into new things, like cultural venues, for example. That is very special in Lisbon and very special in Berlin as well. I mean, the aha moments come from the encounters on a personal level. So when people connect and they share their experience and their stories. That is the one thing. And the second one is also the good conversations that people have during the journey. So the participants amongst each other, they also have a very special situation that they're in, because they're out of their comfort zone, they're kind of in this explorer mode and a traveler mode. So when they are open-minded, then they can explore the world and see something that they haven't seen before, and something that they wouldn't see when they would just go on holiday, because it's a very specific way of exploring the world.
Who are your clients? Who are the people who join innovation expeditions?
Well, the one in Lisbon was a very open group. It was part of a conference, so we had over 150 participants in this one. And there were people from all industries, all different levels. Usually our clients are corporates who are in the middle of a transformation process. So you can look at any industry, really, from insurances to banks to construction companies to mobility companies. And yeah, there's not the one specific company that I would like to mention now.
Na konferenciji La Futura bilo je riječi i o održivom razvoju u oblasti arhitekture i poljoprivrede i biznis modelima koji se pojavljuju na ove teme. U Njemačkoj ima više organizacija koje rade u ovom pravcu, a Johanas Milke je osnivač jedne od njih.
So I'm also co-founder of the initiative Wir bauen Zukunft, or We build future. It's a 10-hectare experimental testing site in nature in the north of Germany. Imagine a place with lots of lakes, a huge garden, a very high diversity in trees and different plants, with different buildings on there. We have a fab lab, we have a seminar house with our own organic restaurant. And so this place I started together with 16 other people with very diverse backgrounds again. And we wanted to create a place where we can experiment with alternative architecture, especially tiny houses and earthships. So we're promoting this new way of building and also living. Yeah? On the other hand, we look at food production. So what could be alternative ways to produce food in the future? And there we are looking at agroforestry, and we're building a permaculture food forest. And the third area there is the experimentation with new models of self-organization. And in terms of organization, we also look at how do we make decisions? Who's giving the direction? Do we want to have a totally flat hierarchy? Are we 100% democratic, consent-based? Or is there a different way? And there are already different models, like Sociocracy 3.0, which promotes a more consent-based decision-making, which means that if I have an idea and I want to bring this into the world, I'm free to do that. And my peer group can give me feedback, can give me their demands and their ideas, but I'm the one who's in charge, and I can make that decision in the first place. So there are different models already out there, and we take them, experiment with that, and then reflect and say, was that valuable now for us? Do we want to continue like this? Or do we change it and adapt it to our individual needs? So that's what I mean with experimenting with different models of organization and self-organization especially.
What have you learned so far from this experimental project?
My biggest learnings, it's very important to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, which means that we need to be brave and to take what's there and build something out of that, and not wait for somebody to give you permission or to give you an assignment or even give you the money, because sometimes your vision is stronger than the understanding of somebody else, and you just need to start it. So, and you can do a lot with a community-based approach, when you bring competencies, skills, and also resources together, and then you share a common purpose and you work towards it. So that's something very important for me in J2C as well as in the future project.
So experimental architecture is an important aspect of your project, We Build the Future. What kind of experiment is that?
With tiny houses, we're experimenting with a smaller footprint. So that means that we have smaller spaces, which you would call your own, and then we have shared places that you use, but you don't use them all the time. For example, a kitchen or a living room or sanitation. And then you have your personal backstage area, I would say, or your living room, yes, which really belongs to you. And in that sense, we are also experimenting with different materials. So we're building them in modular ways, using CNC cutters to prefab the individual elements, and then you can stack them together depending on your individual needs. And in Wir bauen Zukunft, or at the Future Center, you can learn how to build them in workshops, and you can build them yourself, or you can ask for somebody else to build it for you. So there are many different ways how you can get your hands on it. And I think the best way is to experience it yourself by just being there, spending a night in one of these buildings, and getting a feeling of what it would be like, and then you can imagine if that's something for you or not.
You mentioned that there is an important question behind this project, and that is, what do we really need? Why is this question relevant?
Well, the question, what do we really need, is really important, I think, in times where we know that resources are finite. We don't have endless amounts. Sometimes we pretend we do, and we can grow and we can consume as much as we want. But in reality, when you look at the world, we know that our resources are limited, and we need to come up with different ways of living. So I always try to say, let's meet technology halfway, because I don't want to live in a cave and, don't have any of these cool things out there. But on the other hand, I ask myself, what do I really need to have a satisfied and happy life? So apart from the architecture side, we look at permaculture as a guiding, let's say, framework of how do we produce and how do we consume, which means that we bring the planet and the people and the products that we use in balance. So we try to produce as much as we can that we consume, for example. Or we look at edges and we look at chaos in a way that maybe there's something that we can learn from nature. And maybe when you look at a forest, for example, and the most productive area in a forest is the edge between the forest and the land next to it. So in that we imitate that a little bit in terms of biomimicry and create as many edges as possible so that we can get a very high yield from these more, how would you call that? More powerful, powerful elements.
Are there people who live there permanently?
At the moment, not many people live there permanently. It's really about temporary living. So a lot of people come for workshops over the weekends. Then we have volunteers who stay for long term. We have companies who are running their seminars or retreats. And then there are, we call them innovation camps, which are dedicated times where we invite people from different backgrounds to work on a specific theme. Yeah. So most people live in bigger cities around, so in Hamburg or Berlin, or rent smaller houses or farms or apartments in the area. So in the near future, we are building a electromobility service station so that we can shuttle people from the main highway to our park and back with electric cars. We are also building a Fab Lab workshop space so people can really use proper machines and build tools, build their tiny houses, whatever they need to build or fix things. We're also expanding our food forest to 3 hectares with lots of trees, mostly fruit trees, nut trees, and bushes. And we also are now working together with the government to get a strong internet connection put in there so that we can actually offer co-working spaces with a very good, strong connection.
Iskustvo kaže da zemlje koje prednjače kada je u pitanju tehnološki razvoj mogu mnogo da nam otkriju o budućnosti koja će doći. U tom smislu, putovanje u Kinu za mnoge od ovakvih preduzetnika predstavlja i svojevrsno putovanje u budućnost.
As I said, I explore different futures, which means that I travel around the world to visit different companies, get a feeling for different cultures and meet different interesting people. For example, I traveled to Asia a lot this year and to understand first and foremost what's happening there, what is special about it, what's different, and then always the question, what can we as a company learn from Asia and what can our clients learn from Asia? And especially in China, what I found is very interesting is that people are not afraid of technology. Whenever something new comes out there, it seems like people adopt very quickly and accept it. And you can see that in this term of leapfrogging. So they jump over technological development that we've had here in Germany for the past 50 years. They just jump over it straight to, for example, mobile banking. They've never had a bank account with a local bank. Or anything that's really based on mobile technologies is very clearly accepted openly and spread in a massive scale. And the scale is impressive, and also the speed of change is very impressive that I could observe there. Coming back from Asia, I thought, okay, how could I make this valuable for my company and our partners and clients? And we thought of a format which we call a China Masterclass, where we bring together experienced entrepreneurs who have been active in China, together with entrepreneurs and corporate leaders here in Germany, to give a good overview of what is the market like right now, what is the consumer like, and also to show trends and topics that are super hot right now. Which apps are they using right now? Which mobility services are being used right now? And also looking a bit into the future of what's coming next. And then in the second part, we would look at how can we make that valuable for us as German companies when we want to enter the Chinese market, for example. How do we address consumers there? How do we set up a business over there? So we're coming from basics to very specific industry-oriented insights and also working groups. And on the long term, also we can provide access to UX designers in the country, communication agencies, consultants, and government officials to really help settling down there and starting a business in Asia.
Iako se u biznis svijetu sve odavno vrti oko profita, postoje biznismeni koji imaju svjesnost, uticaj i kapital da projektuju vlastitu poslovnu budućnost na održivim osnovama. U toj budućnosti profit i lični dobitak neće biti poslovni prioritet.
So it's on the one hand, it's really looking at the UN sustainability goals as a framework and a shared goal that we work towards. Yes, so that's the starting point, and then you can align that with your company strategy and see, okay, which one of these 17 goals are really in line with what I'm doing here. And that can be in the production sector, that can be in the workplace, that can also be in the emission of CO2. And that's the starting point. And then we use tools that help you to focus on not just the business value and the consumer value, but also on the value of what your impact will be on the planet on the long term. So we're designing templates and methods that really shift that focus towards more planet-centered thinking, circular thinking, system thinking, and also including, of course, the consumer perspective, not only limiting our focus on that. I'm personally very interested in shifting the mindset and the practices from a purely customer-centered approach to a more planet-centered innovation approach, which actually means that in the future, and actually right now, entrepreneurs have to take responsibilities for their actions with a long-term perspective, which means that we have to look at design, production, distribution, and consumption in a more circular way, so we don't create more waste and more harmful products and more things that actually are harming our environment, and actually turn it around and create more sustainable and more regenerative solutions which are more healing the planet and giving back to the planet instead of just taking and taking and taking. And we are developing a framework and a set of tools that help us guide our clients in coming up with new product services and systems that are planet-centered from the start. And of course the consumer is one element in that context, but it's not the center of the world, but the world is the center.